the Hungarian conquest of the Carpathian Basin. Also, Hungarian conquest to Hungarian land-taking was a series of historical events ending with the settlement of the Hungarian people in Central Europe at the turn of the 9th and 10th centuries. Before the arrival of the Hungarians, three early medieval powers, the First Bulgarian Empire, East Francia and Moravia, had fought each other for control of the Carpathian Basin. They occasionally hired Hungarian horsemen as soldiers. Therefore, the Hungarians who dwelt on the Pontic steppes east of the Carpathians were familiar with the future homeland when their land-taking started. The Hungarian conquest started in the context of a late or small migration of peoples. Contemporary sources attest that the Hungarians crossed the Carpathian Mountains following a joint attack in 894 or 895 by the Pechenegs and Bulgarians against them. They first took control over the lowlands east of the river Danube and attacked and occupied Pannonia in 900. They exploited internal conflicts in Moravia and annihilated this state sometime between 902 and 906. The Hungarians strengthened the control over the Carpathian Basin by defeating a Bavarian army in a battle fought at Brezilorspurk on July 4, 907. They launched a series of plundering raids between 899 and 955 and also targeted the Byzantine Empire between 943 and 971. However, they gradually settled in the basin and established a Christian monarchy, the Kingdom of Hungary, around 1000. Pre-Conquest Hungarians. The continuation of the chronicle by George the Monk contains the earliest certain reference to the Hungarians. It states that Hungarian warriors intervened in a conflict between the Byzantine Empire and the Bulgarians on the latter's behalf in the lower Danube region in 836 or 837. The first known Hungarian raid in Central Europe was recorded in the Annals of St. Bertin. It writes of enemies, called Hungarians, hitherto unknown, who ravaged King Louis the German's realm in 862. The Vaj, Victor Spine and other historians argue that Rastislav of Moravia, at war with Louis the German, hired Hungarians to invade East Francia. Archbishop Theotmar of Salzburg clearly states in his letter of around 900 that the Moravians often allied with the Hungarians against the Germans, for many years have in fact perpetrated the very crime of which they have only once falsely accused us. They themselves have taken in a large number of Hungarians and have shaved their own heads according to the heathen customs, and they have sent them against our Christians, overcoming them, leading some away as captives, killing others, while still others, imprisoned, perished of hunger and thirst. Porphyrogenitus mentions that the Hungarians dwelled in a territory that they called Atelkuza until their invasion across the Carpathians. He adds that it was located in the territory where the rivers Barouch, Calbo, Trulos, Brutos and Cerritos run, although the identification of the first two rivers with the Dnieper and the southern Bug is not unanimously accepted. The last three names without doubt refer to the rivers Dniester, Prut and Siret. In the wider region, at Subotsi on the river Adiumka, three graves are attributed to pre-conquest Hungarians. However, these tombs may date to the 10th century. The Hungarians were organized into 7 tribes that formed a confederation. Constantine Porphyrogenitus mentions this number. Anonymous seems to have preserved the Hungarian Hetumergia denomination of the tribal confederation, although he writes of 7 leading persons jointly bearing this name instead of a political organization. The Hetumergia confederation was strengthened by the arrival of the Kabys, who joined the Hungarians following their unsuccessful riot against the Khazar Khaganate. The Hungarians and the Kabas are mentioned in the longer version of the Annals of Salzburg, which relates that the Hungarians fought around Vienna, while the Kabas fought nearby at Kulmite in 881. Majerus proposes that Kava groups were already settled in the Tisza plain within the Carpathian Basin around 881, which may have given rise to the anachronistic reference to Cumans in the Gesta Hungarorum at the time of the Hungarian conquest. The Hetumerja Confederation was under a dual leadership, according to Ibn Rusta and Gardezi. The Hungarians' nominal sacred leader was styled Kend, while the military commander bore the title Gayula. The same authors add that the Gayula commanded an army of 20,000 horsemen, but the reliability of this number is uncertain. Regino of Prom and other contemporary authors portray the 9th century Hungarians as nomadic warriors. Emperor Leo the Wise underlines the importance of horses to the military tactics. Analysis of horse skulls found in Hungarian warriors' graves has not revealed any significant difference between these horses and Western breeds. Regino of Prom states that the Hungarians knew nothing about fighting hand-to-hand information or taking besieged cities, but he underlines their archery skills. Remains indicate that composite bows were the Hungarians' most important weapons. In addition, slightly curved sabers were unearthed in many warrior tombs from the period. Regino of Prom noted the Hungarians' preference for deceptions such as apparent retreat in battle. Contemporaneous writers also recounted the viciousness represented by the slaughter of adult males in settlement raids, armed with swords, body armor, bows and lances. Thus, in battles most of them bear double arms, carrying the lances high on the shoulders and holding the bows in the hands. They make use of both as need requires, but when pursued they use the bows to great advantage. Not only do they wear armor themselves, but the horses of their illustrious men are covered in front with iron or quilted material. They devote a great deal of attention and training to archery on horseback. A huge herd of horses, ponies and mares follows them, to provide both food and milk and, at the same time, to give the impression of a multitude. Carpathian Basin on the eve of the conquest. Peoples. Based on the extant Hungarian chronicles, it is clear that more than one list existed of the peoples inhabiting the Carpathian Basin at the time of the Hungarian land-taking. Anonymous, for instance, first writes of the Slavs, Bulgarians, Vlachs and the shepherds of the Romans as inhabiting the territory, but later he refers to a people called Khazar and to the Sekles. Similarly, Simon of Carpathians first lists the Slavs, Greeks, Germans, Moravians and Vlachs, but later adds that the Sekles also lived in the territory. According to C.A. McCartney, those lists were based on multiple sources and do not document the real ethnic conditions of the Carpathian Basin around 900. According to Johan Oral Pop, Simon of Carpathians listed the peoples who inhabited the lands that the Hungarian conquered and the nearby territories. The Hungarians adopted the ancient names of the longest rivers in the Carpathian Basin from a Slavic-speaking population. For instance, the Hungarian names of the rivers Danube, Drava, Garum, Maros, Ult, Zava, Tisza and Vaj were borrowed from Slavosis. The Hungarians also adopted a great number of hydronyms of Slavic origin, including Balaton, Bastos, Tur and Zagova. Place names of Slavic origin abound across the Carpathian Basin. For instance, Cesengrad, Norgrad, Visegrad and other early medieval fortresses bore a Slavic name, while the name of Keshethli preserved the Latin word for fortress with Slavic mediation. Besides the Slavs, the presence of a German-speaking population can be demonstrated based on toponyms. For instance, the Hungarians adopted the Germanized form of the name of the river Volga and the document known as the Conversion of the Bavarians and the Carpathians from around 870 lists Germanic place names in Pannonia, including Salapi, Ugine and Moserburg. Finally, the name of the Barka, Barrow and other rivers could be either Turkic or Slavic, according to B.E. Acute LME Close-Oaks theory. The detailed description of the Magyars by Western contemporary sources and the immediate Hungarian intervention in local wars give the presumption that the Hungarians had already lived on the eastern territories of the Carpathian Basin since the middle of the 9th century. Regarding the right location of early Hungarian settlements, the Arabic geographer Al-Jayhani in the 870s placed the Hungarians between Don and Danube rivers. Zoch identifies Al-Jayhani's Danube with the Middle Danube region, as opposed to the previously assumed Lower Danube region, because following Al-Jayhani's description the Christian Moravians were the western neighbors of the Magyars. Borderland of empires. The Carpathian Basin was controlled from the 560s by the Avars, a Turkic-speaking people. Upon their arrival in the region, they imposed their authority over the Gepids, who had dominated the territories east of the river Tisiza. However, the Gepids survived up until the second half of the 9th century, according to a reference in the conversion of the Bavarians and the Carpathians to the groups dwelling in Lower Pannonia around 870. The Avars initially were nomadic horsemen, but both large cemeteries used by 3 or 4 generations and a growing number of settlements attest to their adoption of a sedentary way of life from the 8th century. The Avars' power was destroyed between 791 and 795 by Charlemagne, who occupied Transdanubia and attached it to his empire. Archaeological investigation of early medieval rural settlements at Balaton, Magyarod, Nemeske and other places in Transdanubia demonstrate that the main features did not change with the fall of the Avar Khaganate. New settlements appeared in the former borderlands with cemeteries characterized by objects with clear analogues in contemporary Bavaria, Bulgaria, Croatia, Moravia and other faraway territories. A manor defended by timber walls was unearthed at Zalazaba. Avar groups who remained under the rule of the Khagan were frequently attacked by Slav warriors. Therefore, the Khagan asked Charlemagne to let his people settle in the region between Zombadli and Petronel in Pannonia. His petition was accepted in 805. The conversion of the Bavarians and the Carpathians lists the Avars among the peoples under the ecclesiastic jurisdiction of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Salzburg around 870. According to Pohl, it simply proved impossible to keep up an Avar identity after Avar institutions and the high claims of the tradition had failed. The growing number of archaeological evidence in Transdanubia also presumes Avar population in the Carpathian Basin at the eve of the 10th century. Archaeological findings suggesting that there is a substantial late Avar presence on the Great Hungarian Plain. However, it is difficult to determine the proper chronology. A charter issued in 860 by King Louis the German for the Matzi Abbey may well attest that the Onogas were also present in the territory. The charter refers to the marches of the Wangas, situated in the westernmost regions of the Carpathian Basin. The Wanga denomination seems to reflect the Slavic form of the Onogas ethnonym. The territories attached to the Frankish Empire were initially governed by royal officers and local chieftains. A Slavic prince named Pribina received large estates along the river Zala around 840. He promoted the colonization of his lands, and also erected Moserburg, a fortress in the marshes. Initially defended by timber walls, this castle complex became an administrative center. It was strengthened by dry stone walls at the end of the century. 4 churches surrounded by cemeteries were unearthed in and around the settlement. At least one of them continued to be used up to the 11th century. Pribina died fighting the Moravians in 861, and his son, Casel, inherited his estates. The latter was succeeded around 876 by Arnulf, a natural son of Carloman, king of East Francia. Under his rule, Moravian troops entered into the conflict known as the Wilhelmina War, and laid waste from the Rab eastward. Between 882 and 884, according to the Annals of Fulda, Moravia emerged in the 820s under its first known ruler, Mojmir. His successor, Rastislav, developed Moravia's military strength. He promoted the proselytizing activities of the Byzantine brothers, Constantine and Methodius, in an attempt to seek independence from East Francia. Moravia reached its peak of importance under Svetopluk I, who expanded its frontiers in all directions. Moravia's core territory is located in the regions on the northern Morava River, in the territory of present-day Czech Republic and Slovakia. However, Constantine Porphyrogenitus places Great Moravia, the unbaptized, somewhere in the regions beyond Belgrade and Sirmium. His report supported further theories on Moravia's location. For instance, Christo and Senger proposed the existence of 2 Moravias, while Boba, Bolus and Eggers argue that Moravia's core territory is in the region of the southern Morava River in present-day Serbia. The existence of a southern Moravian realm is not supported by artifacts, while strongholds unearthed at Mikulčice, Pohansko and other areas to the north of the Middle Danube point at the existence of a power center in those regions. In addition to East Francia and Moravia, the First Bulgarian Empire was the third power deeply involved in the Carpathian Basin in the 9th century. A late 10th century Byzantine lexicon known as Suda adds that Krum of Bulgaria attacked the Avars from the southeast around 803. The Royal Frankish Annals narrates that the Abodrites inhabiting Dacia on the Danube sought the assistance of the Franks against the Bulgars in 824. Bulgarian troops also invaded Pannonia, expelled the Slavic chieftains and appointed Bulgar governors instead, in 827. An inscription at Provadia refers to a Bulgarian military leader, named one Gavane, drowning in the Tisza around the same time. The emerging power of Moravia brought about a rapprochement between Bulgaria and East Francia in the 860s. For instance, King Arnulf of East Francia sent an embassy to the Bulgarians in 892 in order to renew the former peace and to ask that they should not sell salt to the Moravians. The latter request suggests that the route from the salt mines of the eastern Carpathians to Moravia was controlled around that time by the Bulgarians. The anonymous author of the Gesta Hungarorum, instead of Svetopluk I of Moravia and other rulers known from contemporary sources, writes of personalities and polities that are not mentioned by chroniclers working at the end of the 9th century. For instance, he refers to Menumerat residing in the castle of Bihar, to Zoba, Duke of Nitra by the grace of the Duke of the Czechs, and to Jelus of certain Vlach, ruling over Transylvania. Although early medieval fortresses were unearthed at Bihar and other places east of the Tisza, none of them definitively date to the 9th century. For instance, in the case of Doboka, 2 pairs of bell-shaped pendants with analogues in sites in Austria, Bulgaria and Poland have been unearthed, but Florin Curta dates them to the 9th century, while Alexandru Majoru to the period between 975 and 1050.